That's pretty terrifying. Ooh, what a beautiful axe. Well, the next one better not be better than this because I've maxed out on my marks. I feel a bit sick. There's a weird cock on his head. Hello friends, it's Guy from Midwinter Minis here, coming at you from yet another new angle. Will I eventually settle on one camera angle? Probably not. Who knows? Who cares? In this video, I have the honor and pleasure of judging some of the best painted models you are ever gonna see. This painting competition has been held by the Reddit mini-painting community, which actually has over 400,000 members. I am one of them, and I'm probably one of the least talented, but for some reason they asked me to be one of the judges for the competition, despite me being not very good, despite me being kind of colorblind, and despite me not being able to string a sentence together. You didn't click on the video to hear me talk and talk and talk, you clicked on the video because you want to see cool painted models, and to hear me talk about them. Okay, I'm sitting comfortably, I've got my half pint of coffee ready to go. Now let's get judging. Who are you? Midwinter Minis. You have my permission to put my name next to my feedback. Dooming myself. These first 5 finalists are from the beginner category. Each entry has one preview image chosen by the original painter along with a link to an Imgur gallery with more pictures of the entry. Okay, here we go. That is nice. A Nightbringer, if I'm not mistaken. I like the color use. Particularly. I mean, I'm going to give colour, I think, a pretty solid, I don't know, 9. Let's do that. Basing? It's hard to know because it would be in the setting of an army. So if the rest of the army looks kind of like that, then awesome. But it looks a little bit too floral and happy to match the model itself. So I'm going to maybe kind of go middling on that, maybe a 5. I'm being ultra harsh here, but I feel like I kind of have to be because otherwise I'm going to give everything 10 out of 10. Technique? I like it. There's a few like visible brush strokes, but nothing too crazy. Slight shine on the model. I would maybe knock that down slightly with some, if I was going to go like competition piecing. But I would say technique there is a solid like 5 or 6. I'm going to go for 6. Appeal. I mean, when I opened it up, I said it was cool. I quite like it, and I do quite like it. So I'm going to give it a 7. There we go. Okay, what do we have here? Some kind of elf with a bow. Wood elf, maybe, because there's some wood. Is it wood? No, it's antlers. Deer elf. Basing, I mean, it looks kind of cool, right? That looks like it's in the setting. I'm going to give the basing a 7. The technique, I mean, I'm not sure how they did the cool little starry effect on the cape, so that's a bit of a mystery. And also the antlers, maybe they're antlers, maybe they would, look really, really cool. And there's some shininess on the base, like water effects. I'm going to say technique, maybe a 7 or an 8. Let's say 7. Let's be conservative for the moment because we've got a lot of things ahead of us. Color. I do like the muted color palette and it suits the model. I wouldn't say color is necessarily one of its strong points though, if I'm being totally fair. I'm maybe going to say 6. An appeal, I do quite like it. This is the personal choice category, so I much prefer the kind of look and style of sci-fi miniatures over fantasy. I'm just not really that much of a fantasy fan. I'm going to give a 6. Thinking to myself, I'm going to start on 5 and like add or dock points. I do quite like it, I'm not going to lie. Next. That looks very cool. That is a noise marine, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's time for a quick sip of coffee while I take a look at this. Still way too hot. I've burned my tongue. Basing. That looks fabulous. Classic purple and green combo. I do quite like that there's some foliage as well there, you know, there's little tufts and cool shards of some kind of magic crystal. And skulls. It's not a 40k mini unless it's got skulls, right? Basing, I'm going to say solid 7. Yes, I think that's fair. Technique, I don't know if it's slightly color shifty or metallic glaze thing going on here. It's very nice. I would maybe have liked to seen slightly more kind of shading or highlighting on some of the areas. Some of the things look absolutely amazing, like the little fades on this green flame here, but then some of the metal elements kind of let it down a tiny bit. Or maybe they could have just been bumped up with a tiny touch more highlighting. Some is positive, some is negative, so I'm going to go slap bang in the middle of 5. Color choice, I really like purple and green. I think it's a classic color combo, and the accent of that kind of lovely gold, mwah, beautiful. I'm going to say 7, 8, maybe an 8, 7, sorry. Appeal, okay. Do I like it just because it's a 40k mini? Maybe. I'm going to say 6. That's pretty terrifying. owl monster with horns and really big ears. I like the feathers. That's really nice. Basing. Oh, look at that. It's on some kind of big wood plinth. That's wicked. Look at that. Really nice. It looks like a real piece of wood. Maybe it just is a branch. A dragon. Weird owl dragon. I quite like it. The sort of mossy elements are maybe a little bit too in your face. I would maybe have spread it out slightly, but then again, trees kind of do look a bit weird. Basing, I'm going to say 7. Yeah, it's a nice base. Technique, I really like the feathers, and I think it looks beautiful, to be honest. I think it's really nicely done. I'm going to say a 7. 7. Color, again, it's one of those kind of muted color palette things, and that's not to say that's bad. It's just the color isn't one of the striking elements that really makes me go, whoa, mama, but it is appropriate. Maybe a 6. An appeal, this is a pretty solid 6 and 7 all rounder. There's no bigs or smalls. I'm going to say appeal is a 6. No, maybe a 7. I do quite like it. Owl monster with horns. Oh my word, look at this giant blue dragon. Ah, a dragon on a hoard of gold. 8, because that is a highly appropriate base on its hoard of gold, because everyone knows that's what dragons have. Technique, the scales do look really, really beautiful. Let me maximize one of these pictures. Very pretty. A lot of work has gone into them. And they're not all the same either. They look like they change depending on the curvature of the tail, for example, like they're highlighted more or less. So I'm going to say technique there is a solid 7. I mean, there could be a bit more variation in the techniques on offer, but it's a solid effort. Very nice. 7. The color, beautiful. Really, really nice. Very striking. I'm going to give that an 8. An appeal, even though I don't really like fantasy stuff. I love dragons. I'm going to go 8. Very, very solid blue dragon there. Okay, now we are looking at the intermediate category. It saw the most final submissions, so it's a split into 2 subcategories, small and medium large. Things like character height minus custom bases, proportions, and width were taken into consideration when making these 2 subcategories. These next 5 entries are from the intermediate small category. Is the coffee cool yet? No, it's still really hot. Man, that looks awesome. What is it? It looks like Master Chief on the Akira bike. And the basing looks awesome. And it's got the skid where he would have been on 2 wheels and skid into 2 and the dust is all flown up. I'm going to give that basing a solid 8. The techniques, there's some chipping, nice weathering. There are some beautiful fades on the colors. There's some very, very, very precise highlighting. The metal actually looks like metal. There's like dirt on the tires. That is beautiful. I'm going to give the technique. Do I give it a 9? It's really good. 9. Color. It's all very warmy earth tones. You can see that there's some kind of like blue overtone to complement that and contrast that on the glass and the shiny bits. But I mean, I don't want to punish it for looking realistic. The color is kind of, again, not something that really jumps out and strikes me. So I'm going to give it a 6. Mean? Probably, but I'm the judge for some reason. I do quite like it. Master Chief gang biker on the Akira bike. 7 out of 10. Yes, sir. What do we have here? Some kind of strange froggy priest thing with a fish on its head. I mean, I'm intrigued. Basing? I mean, it looks wet, it looks dingy, it looks pretty nice, to be honest. Very suiting the model. I'm going to give that a solid 8, 9. 9. I said it. I said 9. I can't go back on it. Technique. Again, there's some really cool things on offer. I like how the water is kind of soaked into the foliage and the tufts. That's really, really nice. Also, the paint scheme is actually very striking and there's loads of contrast. It's like really, really nicely highlighted. The bright of the eyes. Things are almost blacklined. Very, very poppy, very punchy. I'm going to say 8 on the technique there. It's very nice. Color, again, it's like a muted natural color palette. The skin color though is really nice and vibrant, so I quite like that. I quite like the way it stands out, so I'm going to give that a 7. I was erring on a 6 just because of that kind of natural look, but I think a 7 is fair. Appeal, I mean, it's weird, right? I do quite like it. I do like a little bit of weird stuff. I'm going to say 7. Slap bang in the middle of I like it. I like it. Oh, a dwarf miner with some cool little slightly glowing runes on his tool. tool. There is some very nice object source lighting going on here. So rather than object source lighting of kind of making the thing look like the color of the light, it actually looks like the color of what he's wearing, which is good. And then the rest is cast into shadow, which is really nice. And also he looks a little bit sooty, like he's been mining in the depths and has got dirt on his face, which is very realistic. So I'm going to say, the basing, sorry, jumping ahead of myself here. Let's talk about basing. It's very simple, and that's not to say it's not good. Simple is often good, especially because he looks like he is a playable character model for a game like Dungeons and Dragons or, something. Mordheim, who knows? It's not overly exciting, but it's functional. And it still looks good, it looks suitable, and there's still object source lighting. It's been treated the same way as the model, although maybe, sometimes the ground is just a bit boring, but you're not going to get punished for that. So I'm going to give it a 6, I think. Maybe a 7. No, 6. 6 is good. Techniques, as I said, techniques on display here are pretty lush, so I'm going to give that a 9. The color, again, it's a muted color palette, but there is very, very nice subtle use of some kind of very nice complementary colors. It's a nice ginger beard, a kind of dirty top. It's red trousers, gold. That's very nice non-metallic metal gold there. I'm going to have to give that an 8, I think. And appeal, I do quite like it. Again, fantasy miniatures, not my thing, but I do quite like it. I'm going to give that a 7. Okay, I think that's pretty fair. Well done. Here we go. Oh, what is this? Looks like some kind of thing you'd meet in Skyrim. It looks awesome. Like a Draugr monster. I don't actually know what it is, but it looks cool. Basing, let's talk about that first. That is sensational. Kind of standing atop some weird little watery inlet in a cave or something. It looks absolutely lovely. The wood looks like wood. The rocks look like rock. There's some beautiful water. It's kind of hard to tell if that's painted or if it's kind of an effect paint. But either way, it looks great. And there's little pebbles and everything. Beautiful base. I'm going to give that a 9. Technique, lovely non-metallic metal on the chain. Really, really beautifully defined musculature on his torso. Ooh, what a beautiful axe. Holy hell. I'm going to have to give it some serious points for that. Technique, 9. That is great. Color use, again, it is using that quite natural, simple color palette. There's no kind of really big garish colors, but that's not to say it doesn't work. And the colors that have been used, especially on the axe to kind of contrast things, I'm going to give that an 8. And its appeal, again, it's kind of weird. Fantasy, not my thing. How many times am I going to say that? It's going to get pretty boring, right? I'm going to give that a 7. High marks. Very nice. Drinking temperature. We're here. What is this? Some very fancy lady circus assassin killer? It looks pretty cool. Okay. Let's take it from the top. Basing. There is some kind of underwater element here that is beautifully smoothed around there. That's hard to do. Like if you have done resin pouring, it's difficult to get that kind of beautiful, smooth, see-through finish on a rim. So points there. There are some skulls in the water. That's very nice, as well as the pebbles. And there's a protruding object, which he's very carefully balancing on with a little ballet foot. I'm going to give that base a 9. That is gorgeous. Technique. It's really, really gorgeous highlighting of the kind of delicate fabric here, which is very, very nice. One thing I maybe would have liked to see a little bit more, although not to kind of downplay subtle paint jobs because you can do things subtly, the metal elements are lacking contrast a tiny bit. I would say I would just have used slightly darker colors to get into the recesses and to kind of push the shadows a little bit more, because they don't appear quite as dark as the shadows on her body and her head, for example. But that's not to say it's not fantastic. I really like it, especially on a darker background. It looks really, really nice, very striking. I'm going to say technique there, 7. Nice. Color use, I really like it, especially like the kind of murky green, how it works with the blue. And then there's the kind of like fleshy element of her face and thighs. It all kind of ties in very nicely together. I'm going to give that an 8 for color. And the appeal, I quite like it. I don't really know what it is. I would like to know what it is. I'm going to say, I would have one in an army if it was a 28mm scale model. I'm going to say an 8. Yes. Next. These next 5 entries are from the intermediate medium-large category. Battle Turtle. Terrapin. I was bitten by a terrapin when I was small. Just a little bit of backstory. I thought it was a friendly tortoise. wasn't a friendly tortoise, it was an angry terrapin and it bit my finger. I've been bitten by quite a few exotic animals, but let's get back to the paint job. The base looks very suitably murky and dingy, swampy. I don't know, it really kind of sells the actual environment that this monster is in, so I quite like it. Some of the bits maybe look a little bit, not rushed, but kind of basic, not to say that's a problem. Tiny little fungus, and of course the skull. I'm going to give the base an 8. Technique. Because it's a larger model, there's a lot more kind of ground to cover. Some elements look a little bit kind of not quite as detailed as some of the other models I've seen in this category, especially the shell. But then, you know, realistic shells sometimes do look quite boring. I mean, the techniques on display here are not the most advanced, but they're still very good. So I'm going to give that a 6. The color I quite like, as I said, I like this kind of big poppy blue and the sort of purples integration of all these colors. It all kind of works together, even though that blue looks a little bit kind of jarring at first. Whoever's painted it has kind of sold it because it's kind of very nicely integrated into the skin color there, and a very striking streaks across his face. Very nice indeed. Going to give the color a 7. And an appeal, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the model. I'm not judging the models, I'm judging the paint jobs, right? I'm going to say 6, I think. Ooh, big elephant boy. I like it. Whoa, look at that. Oh, the base and the elephant are separate. He's got a big pole. Big butt pole to hold him onto it. Let's not judge him. Oh, it goes into the seat. Okay, that makes sense. Lord of the Jungle. I do like the base. I mean, that base is obviously fantastic. It just works beautifully with it. It sets the scene. It shows him to be the Jungle King. He truly is. So I'm going to give it a 9. The technique on display, elephants do have that kind of quite like deep recessed, wrinkly, dusty, but quite detailed look, and captured that quite well on the skin. It's a notoriously difficult thing to actually paint without using dry brushing. But then when you dry brush in a painting competition, it's kind of seen as bad show. An elephant skin to paint without dry brushing that's very, very difficult to do. So I'm going to give that technique a 7. I think that's pretty fair. Colors, I do like the kind of pastel, slightly washed out vibe. I mean, elephants aren't the most colorful things, you know, stonework often isn't the most colorful things, but the things that can be colorful, like the foliage and the gold trinkets and stuff, they really, really pop and they're very vibrant. And there's some very nice, rich, warm ivory tones in there as well that kind of make it a bit more striking. I'm going to color a 7, I think. In terms of appeal, I do really, really like it. I'm not sure what context it would be used in a game or as a sort of display piece, but it doesn't work against it. I think it looks really cool. I'm going to go for a 7. Who do we have here? This looks like a Warhammer 40,000 mini. A very heavily converted mini. I like it. There's skulls from all kinds of things. It's bits of different kits. Let's talk about the base for a second. So in the Rubicon that we were provided as judges, we were encouraged to think of practical base sizes. And I feel like with the details that have been added to this base over the playable base size for this character, which I think is a 40mm base because it's a Terminator model, it's a bit too bulky, kind of sticks out a little bit, maybe would spoil the playability of it. Again, am I judging the playability of a thing in a painting competition? Sounds like I was about to. The base itself looks really cool. I like that there's a kind of like a slightly cave overcrop element here and skulls on sticks and all nasty details, pretty gruesome. I'm not usually a fan of snowy bases. I kind of think that the snow is usually overdone, but here it's done quite tastefully, and it looks like there's an attempt made to make it look like there's some sort of like melty elements here too, which is very nice. So I'm going to give the base a 7, I think. Techniques on display. It's quite busy, but there are a lot of really lovely things on display here. So the non-metallic metal elements have been really, really tastefully done. The cape looks legitimately like nice fabric. It looks really, really good. The fur, again, looks great. It actually looks like an animal. The skulls, maybe, the ones that are used as the trophies on the shield, for example, they're maybe, I feel like they're a little bit too dark. But the armor is beautifully highlighted. There's just such a lot going on. It's such a busy model. But then again, you know, obviously there's been a huge amount of time taken on this and it looks fantastic. The metal elements look amazing. I'm going to give the technique there a solid 8. The colors, I feel like for a Space Wolf, it's too blue. I feel like that's maybe a kind of rogue choice or a decision to make there, but I much prefer the kind of like the pastel, quite bright blue of the old Space Wolves, or that kind of mid-tone grey blue. This one's quite a vibrant poppy blue. Not to say it's not well painted, it's just for me that isn't quite Space Wolfy. Not that it really matters. I do really like it. The colour use is very nice, especially on the metals and the non-metallic metal stuff. I'm going to give that a 7. And appeal, I think it looks like a great mini. If I was playing someone and they had that as one of their miniatures, I would be taking all of the photos I could. It looks fantastic. I'm going to give that an 8. Oh, here we go, a bust. Nice, a bust of a goblin thing. Orc? No, it must be a goblin. Troll! Of course, why wouldn't it be a troll? The base element here is difficult, right? Because there isn't really a base to speak of. It's an integrated part of the model, essentially. You've got to be neutral here, so that's just a 5. It's not really good or bad, it just is. That was accidentally quite profound. The techniques on display here are fantastic. The leather on his wristlet look really, really nice. The kind of texture of the rust is very believable, and the sharp edge, the usable edge of the blade is totally fresh and clean, which is how rusty things get, really. The used part is not rusty and the unused part gets rusted. The leather of the sort of aprony thing looks amazing. The edge highlighting on and the non-metallic metal element of the buckle, really, really beautiful. The skin is vibrant and poppy. There's a weird cock on his head. What's not to love? What's not to love? So vibrant. Okay, so technique, I'm going to say a solid 8, and colour as well, I'm going to say a very nice 8. And appeal, I think I've got to say 8 as well. It is very, very cool looking bust. A really beautiful display piece. The crazy face of the cockerel is, that's tipped up to a 9. I love it. Oh my word, here we go. This is disgusting. And what is it? Some kind of rat pope. This is perfect. I feel a bit sick. Okay, let's start from the beginning. The base looks fantastic. We've got some kind of marble stone slabs. We've got some beautiful draped fabric. We've got cushions. Lovely. Disgusting, but lovely. Basing, 9. Easy. Technique, there are some really, really gruesome details here, like the horrible veins and real nasty pussy skin conditions on the legs. The skin just looks painful. It's really nicely rendered. Then you've got really nice elements like the fabric. The contrast of those things is really, really pleasant, despite the actual subject being so unpleasant. Some elements have been very, very beautifully done. Some look like they've been kind of not rushed, but haven't been given the same kind of attention, so that the back of his Pope hat, for example, that purple looks like it's maybe just been sort of 1 or 2 coats and then done. Not much else has been done to it. Maybe I'm wrong. There's some really, really nice details in the fabric too, but some of them maybe, again, look like they kind of haven't been rendered with the same passion or time that the others have. And that's not to say it's bad, it's just to say that I'm looking for critical detail here. The metals have been really beautifully painted. There's like weird stony textures. It's very, very nice. I'm going to give the technique an 8. And the colour use I think this is one of the best so far. In some ways absolutely grotesque, and in some ways beautiful. Solid 9. An appeal, this is an 8, I think. Maybe it's a 9. Maybe it's a 9. It's a 9. Okay, we have now entered the advanced category. The coffee's almost gone. Wow. That looks fancy. That is the definition of fancy man with cape. Really hard to fault, actually. I'm just kind of looking at this thinking, like, how am I going to say anything bad about this? Not bad, but critical, you know what I mean? The beautiful, beautiful lighting of the clothes. It almost looks like the shadows cast rendered on the fabric themselves, so kind of a clear point of light because it's hitting his knee there and it's dark on the other knee. Very, very nice. Very nice indeed. Those horns are so beautifully painted. Wow. The little texture on his robe here and that red is just so explosive. It's gorgeous. This kind of padded fabric-y plate thing on his thigh, that just looks so believable, like you're just looking at a photo almost rather than a model. Skin tones are absolutely spot on. Painted tiny wrinkles on his palm. Outrageous. Basing, again, that's a solid 8, I think. It could be slightly more fancy, maybe. What's the kind of big cross thing embedded in? Is it earth? Could be a tiny bit more detail. I'm really nitpicking here. Technique, it's got to be a 9. That's just absolutely out of the park. Beautiful. The colour, again, so good. That's a solid 9. Appeal, Is it a 9 or a 10? Very good. Very good indeed. I don't want to say 10 and then have the next ones be, blow this out of the water. So I'm going to say 9, but I'm going to bear this one in mind. So things have to be better than this to get that 10. Ooh, that is very nice. Kind of looks like, the traditional depiction of Sinbad. I'm not sure what the model actually is, but man, that's really, really nice. Base, there's like a little kind of comic strip diorama almost, a kind of skull on the ground, a little landscape painted in the background, just like a little spaghetti western. Very nice. In a way, that sort of painting almost lets it down. It's a little bit too contrasty and it takes your eye away from the model itself. So I'm going to say maybe 7 there, which is a shame because the rest of it is very nice. In terms of technique, there are some very, very nice shadows and highlights and contrasty colors, and it's really, really beautiful on the fabric especially. Again, some really amazing non-metallic metal painting in this competition. It makes me embarrassed that I've barely even tried to do it myself. Who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? The boots, they look amazing, very realistic. The cape looks fantastic. I feel like the one place it's maybe let down slightly is the fur. It maybe looks a little bit too sort of simply painted, like it's painted to a different standard than the rest of it, which is a shame. So I'm going to say technique of 7 there, but I really, really love the colors. This is what I've kind of been waiting to say. I'm going to give the colors a 9. General appeal, I really like it. I'm going to say a 7. I think that's fair. Slap bang in the middle of yes, it's good. Who do we have here? Tiny little goblin warrior. Awesome. Okay, let's talk about this base, because the base isn't just the base, it's like part of the model. The model itself is the little goblin warrior, but he's standing on the head of a big slain troll monster, decapitated head. Bang on. Absolutely awesome. There's even some nice little dried leaves on the base as well to, contrast the big, slain, horrible head. And there's some gory details on the severed neck as well. Very nice touch. I like it. I like it. Basing, 9. Now, the techniques here are quite interesting. Rather than go down the kind of traditional painting route of non-metallic metal here, he's gone for quite a comic book style, almost like you see in like Slain in 2000 AD, with the shiny beams of light being reflected on the metal rather than purely just kind of, mysterious fades. Striking, especially on something this small. The fabric is amazing. It's really beautifully rendered, very believable. There's really nice shadows, like details disappear into the shadows in a very vibrant way they catch the light. What more can you ask for? The hair's painted really, really tastefully. His face, there's just so much detail on that stupid little face. I love it. It's absolutely gorgeous. The little dragon's head on the butt of the sword. Stellar. Really, really amazing work. I'm going to give that a technique of 9. The color use, I feel like it has to be a 9. The royal blue, kind of bluey purple of his fabric, and the green reflected in the metal of the sword. Really believable skin tones on that slain troll's head. Spectacular. Really nice. And then obviously the kind of the gold metals. Very, very nice indeed. Going to give that a 9. An appeal. This is a 9 all around. Very, very solid. I realize I haven't given a 10 yet. That's the way I roll. Finalist 4. Holy mama. This looks very, very nice. What is it? That base. Oh my god, look at the crystals. Wow. Wow. Those crystals are just so beautifully painted. And there's like a shiny orb. Wait. The shiny orb has been painted in matte paints. It's not just metal. That looks insane. This is getting very difficult now. Maybe I should have started on lower marks. I feel like I've got to go for a 10 on that base. That is a spectacular amount of work. A thing that is not the model you're painting, just the thing it's on. Outrageous. Technique. There is such smooth, beautifully smooth fades going on here. Faultless edge highlighting. Edge highlighting in a believable way, not where it's just, one kind of color very carefully painted everywhere. It's just, it works wherever it is. It just really lifts the model away from the background, makes it very, very visually appealing and very striking, just makes the contrast really smash your eyes out, which is what I want. That's got to be at least a 9. Is it a 10? Let's say 9. 10. 10. It's a 10. Color, the mix of everything. So like the metals on the wing and the fleshy like flaps of this wing, and that it looks good from every photo. So hard to fault. The colors reflected on the metal of the wing. You know what? Beautifully painted. Unreal. Wow. Well, the next one better not be better than this because I've maxed out on my marks. This is very difficult again. There are some absolutely beautiful details here. Gorgeous model. Such an expressive face. So beautifully painted as well. Where this is maybe going to fall down is that the base is, it's very fitting. It's beautiful. It's a really, really nice bit of, I don't know if it's resin or wood. It's so appropriate for the model, but is it more impressive than the last one? Don't think it is. It looks amazing. It looks beautiful with the plinth, with the haiku inscription. It's gorgeous. And the little petals falling over the front of it. Outstanding. But I feel like it's a 9. 9. Technique. It looks like real fabric. It looks like whoever's painted it has actually painted the strands of the fiber. That's got to be a 10. In terms of color use, this is one of those things where it's, even though it's very subdued and it's very muted, it looks like an adventurer on a kind of moonlit night. Really, really nicely captured. And all the details on the little shell of the little turtle companion actually look like real vegetables in his basket. They look like pretty realistic courgettes, He's even gone to the detail of adding what looks like kind of slightly dried skin on the knuckles of the warrior. And you can almost feel like there's a kind of a hint at like the hair on his arms just from the paint. That's outstanding. Really, really amazing. I feel like the color use has got to be a 10. I don't know how that could be improved. So it's a 10. And again, appeal. That's a beautiful piece of art. You'd have that on your mantelpiece with pride. So I'm going to give that a 10 as well. That's it. And this is the end of the survey. Do I want to go back and change anything? No. It's time to commit. That's the judging done. Well, I hope you found that as illuminating and interesting and inspiring as I did. Some of those paint jobs are just outstanding, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.